This was a religious population of people, by and large, who were seeking to change their sexual orientation because their religious faith, most of them are Christians, because of that religious faith, they believed that their homosexual orientation was something that was not desirable and that they wanted to change. And so this is a very relevant study to those crucial questions: is change possible, and is the attempt harmful? Mark Yarhouse and I found, first of all, that in terms of the average changes on the measures that we used of sexual orientation, that on average, going through this Exodus ministry process produced statistically significant change away from homosexual orientation and towards heterosexual orientation, on average. The change away from homosexual orientation was in general more significant than the change towards heterosexual orientation, but both were statistically significant. Once we looked at those changes on average, then we went into the database and looked at, were there subgroups that experienced more or less significant change? And we wound up classifying our subjects in a variety of ways. We found that about 15% of our subjects experienced remarkable, dramatic change that we wound up labeling conversion. These were people who had experienced strong homosexual orientation before and now reported being well-adjusted heterosexuals. An additional significant group of people, almost a quarter of the sample, experienced change to what we called chastity. These were people who reported a significant decrease in homosexual orientation, but didn't report movement towards heterosexuality. And these people typically described themselves as success cases. They got from the Exodus experience what they wanted, which was release from what they regarded as their bondage to homosexual orientation. Together, these two groups, conversion and chastity, success groups, constituted about a third of the entire, or over a third of the entire population. Then there was an additional group that was just under a third who had experienced some significant change, but it was not enough that they were yet calling themselves success cases. And so when you put the success cases and these continuing, we call them continuing cases, those groups added up to about 2/3 of the total population. And then the final third were people who experienced no meaningful benefit from the experience, or who found it to be a failure and had gone back to gay identity and embraced various forms of what it means to live life as a homosexual person. A couple things stand out as most important. First of all, again, science has been used as a bludgeon against the traditional Christian sexual ethic to say that the church has obviously been wrong for 2,000 years. I think that the scientific evidence actually has little to say one way or the other. I would not want to make the argument that the scientific evidence proves that the Christian sexual ethic is right. I think that the scientific evidence simply doesn't have much to say about the validity of the traditional Christian sexual ethic. And so I hope that people will take away question marks and understanding of just how complex the scientific findings are in this area. The second thing that I want people to take away is appreciation for the incredible complexity of human sexuality. The world wants to sort everyone into dichotomous categories. You are either gay or straight, and the reality is that our sexual natures, sexual orientation, sexual identity are incredibly more complex than what the general public understands. These results suggest that change is possible for some. It doesn't indicate that change is possible for everybody. It doesn't indicate that anybody can change, but it does indicate that change is possible for some. Our results also indicate that the dire predictions that the attempt to change is somehow dramatically harmful to individuals, there's simply no evidence that that is the case. Now, that is not to say that that certain anecdotes about certain individuals being harmed are somehow untrue, but just like any medical study about the effects of a new drug or a certain type of surgery or something like that, you study those things on average, and our results suggest that on average the attempt to change is not harmful. And so you put those two together, and we think there's significant reason to question the movement towards banning any attempt to change, declaring such attempts to change to be unethical. We want to hold out the possibility for individuals to have the autonomy to make decisions for themselves based on their read of what the empirical scientific findings report.